If you had to choose to spend eternity with Callum Turner or Miles Teller, who would you choose? I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can go wrong, but let's talk about A24's new romantic comedy, Eternity. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watcher Pass. I'm here to talk to you about Eternity, which comes to theaters on November 26, 2025. It is a new romantic comedy drama from A24 that looks at an impossible choice and a very fun but, stressful look at the afterlife. My hot take is I think you should watch it. I like this movie a lot. I thought it was really clever. I thought it was a fun romantic comedy drama with an impossible choice, a great cast, a wonderful sense of humor, and plenty of heart and heartache. I thought the writing was great. I thought the humor was fantastic, and there was a few things I didn't love about it, but overall, I really liked this movie. I thought it was really well done. Couldn't ask for a better cast. Couldn't ask for a more interesting conundrum and an interesting place. So I definitely think you should check it out. Check it out when it comes to theaters on November 26, 2025. And all that being said, I'm going to tell you a little about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then really quickly go into a recap. So as you can imagine, there'll be spoilers in the recap section. If you don't know what happens in this movie, and you might not, there are some big surprises, there are some big twists that happen along the way. I would turn it off when you get to the recap. Before that, though, I'll keep it vague. I'll keep it spoiler free. Let's try to get to those spoilers. So in Eternity, you have Joan, who has the impossible choice of choosing between the man that she has built a life with and her first husband, and the choice will determine who she spends eternity with. It is a gut-wrenching choice. It is an impossible choice. What is she going to choose? Well, you have to watch the movie to find out. So, things I liked about this movie. The first, I like the cast. It's a great cast. Look, Elizabeth Olsen is fantastic. She's always great. She does a really good job as Joan. But also, the two kind of choice men that she has, Miles Teller and Callum Turner, are both fantastic. Callum Turner is his usual kind of cocky, perfect self, and then Miles Teller is kind of a funny, uh, lovable but annoying person that Joan has spent her life with. I loved all of them. I thought they were all fantastic, and then the rest of the cast is really great. You got Divine Joy Randall, John Early. All wonderful people in this strange film. Second thing I love the writing and the humor. I thought it was really funny. I thought it had a great sense of humor. I thought the writing was good. I thought the dialogue was good. It definitely pulls at your heartstrings, but has enough humorous moments in here that you kind of are smiling half the time as you're dealing with all this drama. I thought it was a really clever sense of humor. I loved kind of the eternity world, the afterlife world, and some of the places that people might choose to go to. So that meant I was just kind of smiling throughout. The third thing I love the imagination. It's very imaginative. The idea that you go to this afterlife holding zone and then you have to choose which eternity to go to. And some of the eternities are insane. Some of the eternities are, wonderful. It has a really good, dry sense of humor, an Americana feel to a lot of them, which is a lot of fun to see. And it is just clever. There's every time, there's a different eternity. There's some commercial advertising for the eternities. There's a ton of really imaginative and funny things that keep you kind of guessing what will happen next. The fourth thing I love the music. It's got some really great music. Definitely sets the tone. Definitely pulls at your heartstrings as you would expect in any sort of romance movie. There are some big moments and some big, heartfelt and heart-wrenching things. The fifth thing I love the heart. It definitely looks at life and love and what it kind of means for all that, and especially for Joan, who she's gonna choose, what she's gonna choose, what is important to her. I definitely enjoyed the heartfelt moments, although sometimes they did hurt a little bit. If you depending on your life experience, depending on what you've gone through, you are gonna feel some pain as well as some joy. And the last thing I like the ending to an extent. I thought it was an interesting ending. I'll go into it in the recap. There's some things I didn't love about it, but overall, I thought it was an interesting ending. They kind of threw a couple twists in there that were fun to see. So all that being said, things I didn't love about it. It's a little bit slow. It's not bad, but there is a lot of kind of wondering what will happen next. It's not too bad. It definitely kind of keeps moving along, but there's some fairly slow moments as we're kind of waiting for it to decide and seeing what will happen next. Second thing I didn't love, I kind of wanted more. Some of the choice feels a little bit watered down. I feel like they could have gone a little bit more extreme. They had a ton of imaginative afterlives. We didn't see that many. We saw brochures about them. We saw posters about them. They were all really funny. I kind of wanted to see more. And also, the choice between the two is the central piece, but it does feel a little bit watered down when we finally get to it. I'll go into that in the recap. But again, not a huge complaint. I still really enjoyed the movie. I just kind of wanted more. And the last thing I didn't love as much, the ending to some extent. There's some things about the end I didn't love. I'll go into that in the recap. But I thought it ended well. I thought it was an interesting ending, but there were some things that were kind of pulled me a little bit wrong. So All that being said, Eternity comes to theaters on November 26th, 2025. Like I said, I definitely think you should watch it. I think you should definitely check it out. And if you do see it, let me know what you think. Let me know what you liked and didn't like. I'd love to hear it. I'm going to really quickly go into a recap. So if you don't know what happens in this movie, I'll turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So, Joan and Larry have been married for like 65 years. They go to a gender reveal party. Larry chokes on a pretzel and he dies, and he goes to the afterlife where you have 7 days to choose which eternity you are going to be in, and that is the choice for the rest of eternity. That's your choice that you have to live with. If you ever try to come back, they will arrest you and throw you into the void, which is just eternal darkness. So, gotta choose wisely. But Larry's there, but Joan is not. His wife Joan, she has cancer, so she'll probably pass soon, but she isn't there, and Larry wants to figure out which eternity she will go to. And as Larry is leaving to go to his eternity, Joan arrives. So now Larry has Joan there, and so he's trying to convince her which eternity to go to so they can be together. But a wrench goes into here because Joan's first husband, someone named Luke, who went to war, he was a soldier, he went to the Korean War, he died in service. He has been waiting in eternity for 67 years, waiting for Joan to get there so he can win her back. And so now Joan is faced with an impossible choice. She's going to choose Luke, her first love, or Larry, the one that she's built a life with. She has a tough time, and Luke and Larry are not the best of friends. They are not, kind of like helping each other out here, and so Joan has to make a choice. Now eventually, with the help of her ACs, the afterlife coordinators, her afterlife coordinator is Ryan. He's really funny. He is also Luke's afterlife coordinator, or at least Luke's friend, so he's kind of like pulling for Luke. And Larry's afterlife coordinator is Anna, so they both kind of try to help wrangle their clients, but also advocate for them, trying to get Joan to choose who. But eventually, they make a call. They call up to the big man upstairs, and they get a special waiver for Joan. She is able to go spend a little bit of time in each afterlife with each of her potential mates so she can make her choice. So Luke goes first. They go to Mountain World. That is where, Luke's ideal world is. And that seems to be where Joan's kind of leaning to as well. So they go out there. It's, fun. They're kind of like hesitant at first, but they have a good time. It seems to be kind of like an ideal situation. And now she comes back and she has some time with Larry. And Larry chooses Beach World. Larry wants to go to the beach. He's happy there. And so Larry and Joan go to the beach. It's not ideal. Like it's a little bit crowded. They don't really have like the kind of like perfect time, but they do bond over their shared memories, their shared experiences, things like that. And so when they get back, Joan has to choose, and she's having a very tough time deciding. Now, luckily for all of them, their neighbor Karen also died. So Karen and Joan go on a wild night. They get drunk. They talk about a few things to help Joan make her decision. And finally, after that night, she has a decision. She calls everyone together. She calls her two potential life partners together and tells them she chooses neither of them. She's choosing to kind of like do her own thing, which I thought was actually kind of interesting. Like the kind of premise that we've gotten so far is that both of these men shaped her lives, but they also kind of like, I don't know, not controlled, but they they dictated kind of how Joan's life would happen. She married Luke very young. He went off to war. She didn't really have much of a say in it. I guess you don't really have much of a say when someone has to go off to war, but that kind of like he left her home alone, and then she died. He died, and so she was devastated by that. Larry was there. He came in. He made her feel better. Fell in love. They had a family, but it does feel like he was him and Joan didn't perfectly mesh. They kind of had somewhat different interests. It felt like maybe she capitulated to him a lot, and so I thought this was an interesting choice. Like, yeah, Joan is now going to kind of like see what her own path is, forge her own path. She gets ready to go. She's going to Paris World with Karen, and so she packs her bags. She gets ready to go, and while she's on the train waiting, Larry has an epiphany, and he runs over to the train, knocks on the window. Joan comes out, and Larry says basically like, "You should choose Luke. You deserve to have a fiery, romantic, wonderful love that you didn't get with him, and so I choose. You should choose Luke, and I'll just be happy knowing you're happy." It's a very sweet scene. It's a very kind of like sweet sentiment. Joan hugs him. They're both very sad, but I think she is, happy to finally, I guess, have permission. But it was weird because I liked her choice of like, I'm going to choose me. I thought that was an interesting way to end it. That's not how it ends because she gets off the train. she and Luke go to Mountain World and they start their life. And at first, it's wonderful, it's romantic, it's beautiful. You know, they seem to be having fun, they seem to be very much in love, which they are. But over time, it seems like Joan misses things about her other life, things about the life that she had with Larry. So she keeps going back to this place called the Archives, where it'll show you your memories from the past. And so she keeps looking at her memories from the past of her life with Larry, of her moments, things like that. And she spends her nights there, kind of reminiscing. And that kind of makes her very distant during the day when she is with Luke in the mountains. And so also she doesn't really seem to love the mountains as much. I don't think she really kind of like her and Luke never really meshed as well because they got married so young and then he went off. So Joan starts to be a little unsatisfied here. Eventually, this comes to a head when Joan and Luke have a serious talk, and she says that she has to go back. She has to try to be with Larry. Luke is obviously devastated, but he does help her try this. They distract the guard at the archives. Joan is able to get a key for the archives room that will lead back to the eternity room. So she goes into the archives, and then while she's in the archives, she like uses the key and goes to the back of the archives. And this was kind of weird because this was where all the sad memories, I guess, were stored. It was an interesting premise, but didn't really make a ton of sense. Joan goes through a couple sad memories, but as soon as she opened that door, the archives police were coming to get her, and so she has to run. She goes through some of her sad memories trying to evade the police, and eventually she makes it back to the eternity world. But now she's a fugitive, so she has to hide. Eventually, she makes her way to where Larry is, and Larry is now the bartender in eternity. That was where Luke was while he was waiting for Joan. So it seems like Larry is here to spend some more time trying to figure out what to do next. Joan shows up at the bar. They both have a drink. Larry asks what they have to do next, and Joan says she has a plan, but it might be, dangerous. And Larry's like, when do we leave? So they apparently get moving and make their way to some other. I'm not sure if this feels like maybe it was an unused eternity. What happened is like the eternities, there were so many of them. Occasionally they would fill up or get discontinued for certain reasons, like maybe they were no longer culturally acceptable, or they would fill up because everyone wanted to go there. So it feels like this was maybe an old eternity that was discontinued, but they make their way over there. It is essentially their home, like they call it Oakville, where Larry and Joan built their lives. They make their way to that eternity. They're walking down the street. Joan's like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "Looks like Oakville." And he's like, "It's perfect." So they walk off into the sunset in the life that they have built, and they both seem happy. Is Luke happy? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, he's in the mountains. That's where he wanted to be, but he might have some regret overall. But that is eternity. Like I said, I liked it. I love the cast, love the humor. I did kind of, think the ending kind of dragged on a little bit. I did like Joan's choice. I mean, I guess in my ideal world, they would have maybe had a couple more eternity dates, like seen a few more afterlives, maybe be able to like sample a couple more. I get that they probably didn't have the time or the budget to do too many of them. But I thought that would have been fun if like they went to a couple different eternities to try some out. And then, Joan chose that she's going to, go to her own eternity, forge her own path, something like that. That might not be the happiest of endings, but I thought that was an interesting kind of like empowering ending. But it does end in a happy ending, but it just kind of drags on a little bit. So that is Eternity. Definitely check it out when it comes to theaters on November 26, 2025. If you do see it, let me know what you think. Let me know what you liked and didn't like. I'd love to hear it. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.